Welcome to mysticlibraryX, the channel dedicated to uncovering the greatest mysteries of history. From lost civilizations and ancient legends to mythological gods and unsolved enigmas, we bring you fascinating stories from the past. If you love exploring the unknown, subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new discovery. Now, let's unravel the secrets of Egyptian mythology. At the dawn of existence, there was only emptiness, no land, no sky, no life. The universe was nothing but an endless, swirling ocean of chaos. From this boundless void, a sacred mound called Benben emerged, rising above the waters like the first solid ground in creation. Atop this great pyramid-shaped mound, a lotus flower slowly unfurled its petals, revealing within it the radiant god Ra. As he awakened, light burst forth, illuminating the darkness and marking the beginning of the world. Ra, with his divine power, brought forth the first generation of gods. From his very essence, he created Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of rain. Yet, the universe remained a vast expanse of primordial waters. And Shu and Tefnut, eager to explore, plunged into the depths to uncover its mysteries. Time passed, but they did not return. Ra, overcome with worry and fearing that he had lost his children forever, sent his most trusted messenger to search for them and bring them back. After what felt like an eternity, Shu and Tefnut finally returned from the depths of the primordial waters. Ra, overwhelmed with joy at the sight of his children, shed tears of pure relief. As his divine tears touched the earth, they transformed into the first human beings, giving rise to mankind. Shu and Tefnut, continuing the cycle of creation, gave birth to two new deities, Geb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. With their birth, the separation of the heavens and the land came to be, shaping the world as it was known. Ra, seated upon his celestial throne, ruled over the universe as the supreme deity, the first and greatest pharaoh. As a benevolent ruler, Ra blessed Egypt with sacred animals, bestowing the land with the strength of the ox and the majesty of the lion. However, his most precious gift was the Nile River, a divine lifeline that would nourish the land and sustain civilization. Along its fertile banks, humanity flourished, building temples and cities in devotion to the gods. Yet, amidst this era of prosperity, Ra's heart grew heavy with a troubling vision. He foresaw that his own descendants, his grandchildren, would one day give birth to a new generation of gods, ones destined to challenge and ultimately overthrow him. Determined to preserve his reign, Ra issued a divine decree: the heavens and the earth were forbidden from bearing children. Thus, the bond between Nut, the sky, and Geb, the earth, was severed, preventing them from bringing forth life. But fate cannot be denied, and soon, the gods themselves would defy this command. Despite Ra's divine decree, Nut and Geb could not resist their destiny. Their love defied the will of the supreme god, and from their forbidden union, four powerful deities were born: Isis, the goddess of magic and motherhood; Nephthys, the guardian of the dead; Seth, the god of storms and chaos; and Osiris, the embodiment of life and renewal. As Ra had foreseen, this new generation of gods ushered in a great upheaval. Osiris, wise and just, rose to power, challenging the old order. The time of Ra's supreme reign came to an end, and the sun god was cast into the heavens, watching over the world from above. With Ra's rule overthrown, Osiris ascended as the new ruler of the world, ushering in an era of prosperity in civilization. But peace was not destined to last. Osiris's rule, though wise and just, was shadowed by looming danger. His own brother, Seth, was consumed by jealousy and ambition. As the god of storms and destruction, Seth could not bear to see Osiris flourish while he himself was left to rule over the barren, lifeless desert. Determined to seize the throne for himself, Seth plotted in silence, his heart filled with schemes of betrayal. The balance of the divine world was at stake, and so began one of the greatest sagas in Egyptian mythology, the battle for ultimate power among the gods. With Ra no longer ruling, Osiris ascended as the new supreme god. Unlike his predecessor, Osiris was not only a ruler but also a bringer of knowledge and order. Alongside his devoted wife, the goddess Isis, he ushered in an era of prosperity, transforming the once primitive world into a flourishing civilization. Osiris taught humanity the secrets of agriculture, showing them how to cultivate the land, grow crops, and harness the power of the Nile's floods. He introduced them to weaving, enabling them to create cloth from natural fibers, and revealed the art of baking bread, ensuring that no one would go hungry. But his greatest gift was not just sustenance, it was justice. Osiris established laws to replace chaos with order, laying the foundation for a structured society where fairness and morality prevailed. Under his divine rule, Egypt blossomed. Fields stretched wide under the sun, temples rose in his honor, and the people, grateful for his guidance, worshipped him as both king and savior. The world, it seemed, had finally reached harmony. But darkness lurked in the shadows. An envious heart, filled with bitterness, was plotting the downfall of the great Osiris. Yet, peace was not destined to last. Osiris had an ambitious and resentful brother, Seth. Unlike Osiris, who ruled over a prosperous and fertile kingdom, Seth was confined to the barren wastelands of the desert, a place of lifeless sand and scorching winds. He watched with envious eyes as his brother basked in glory, beloved by gods and mortals alike. Hatred festered in his heart, growing with each passing day. The final betrayal came when Osiris, in a moment of weakness, lay with Nephthys, Seth's wife. From this forbidden union, a child was born, Anubis, the god of the dead. To Seth, this was the ultimate humiliation, an unforgivable act that sealed his determination to take revenge. Disguising his true intentions, Seth invited Osiris to a grand feast in his honor, preparing a magnificent banquet filled with laughter, music, and wine. As the celebration reached its peak, Seth presented an exquisite, beautifully decorated coffin, declaring that he would gift it to whoever fit perfectly inside. Amused and intrigued, Osiris stepped into the coffin, unaware of the trap that had been laid for him. The moment Osiris lay down, Seth and his followers slammed the lid shut, sealing him inside. Before anyone could react, they carried the coffin to the Nile and cast it into the dark, rushing waters. The mighty Osiris, ruler of the world, was left to drown, swallowed by the depths of the river. But even in death, Osiris's story was far from over. Grief-stricken and heartbroken, Isis wandered the lands in search of her beloved husband. Her sorrow was so deep that her tears fell endlessly, flowing into the Nile and causing its annual floods, nature itself mourning the loss of Osiris. But mourning alone would not bring him back. Determined to find him, Isis, accompanied by her sister Nephthys, scoured the vast land of Egypt, following whispers of the wind and omens from the gods. At last, Isis found Osiris's body, hidden among the reeds of the Nile. She carefully concealed him, hoping to restore his life in secret. But Seth, ever watchful, discovered her plan. In a furious rage, he tore Osiris's body apart, ripping it into 42 pieces and scattering them across Egypt. Ensuring that no one could ever bring him back, but Isis would not be defeated. With the aid of Anubis, the god of the dead, she embarked on an impossible journey, retrieving each piece of Osiris, one by one, from the farthest corners of the land. With unwavering devotion, she carefully reassembled his broken form, and under Anubis's sacred guidance, she performed the first ritual of mummification. With her divine magic, Isis breathed life back into Osiris, but fate had already sealed his destiny. He could no longer remain among the living. Instead, he would rule over the underworld, guiding the souls of the dead and becoming the eternal king of the afterlife. But before his departure, he left behind one final gift, the promise of vengeance, for from this union, a son was conceived. And that son would grow to become Egypt's greatest warrior. Before descending into the underworld, Osiris left behind a single hope, his son, Horus. Raised in secrecy by Isis, Horus grew up knowing that his destiny was to avenge his father and reclaim the throne that had been stolen. He swore an unbreakable oath: one day, he would face Seth and put an end to his reign of tyranny, and so, the battle for Egypt's future began. Seth, the god of chaos and destruction, had stolen the throne through murder and deceit. With Osiris gone, he ruled Egypt with an iron fist, bringing darkness and fear to the land. But far away, hidden from his gaze, the child of prophecy was growing stronger. Horus, the falcon-headed god, was destined to bring light back to Egypt. As he came of age, he stepped forward to challenge his uncle, demanding justice for his father. The gods themselves gathered to witness the trial, with Ra presiding over the great dispute, but this was no simple argument, this was war. Horus and Seth clashed in battle after battle, their divine powers shaking the very foundations of the world. The war between them was more than a struggle for the throne, it was a war between order and chaos, light and darkness. And neither was willing to surrender. What followed was one of the most brutal conflicts in Egyptian mythology, a war that would shake the heavens and test the will of the gods. For years, the gods remained divided, who was the rightful ruler of Egypt, Horus or Seth. Ra, the sun god, held sympathy for Seth, for the god of chaos had long been his protector, shielding him from the monstrous serpent Apophis during his nightly journey through the underworld. Perhaps, Ra wondered, did Seth not deserve the throne after all? Seth, sensing an opportunity, proposed a challenge. He and Horus would transform into mighty hippos and remain submerged underwater for 3 months. The one who could endure the longest would prove his strength and right to rule. Horus agreed, but unlike Seth, he had an advantage. His mother, Isis, watched over him. As the days passed, Isis saw Seth in his vulnerable state. This was her chance. If she struck now, she could end his reign of terror forever. But at the last moment, compassion overtook her. Instead of finishing him, she let him live. Horus, emerging from the waters, saw what his mother had done. His fury knew no bounds. How could she betray him? How could she spare the very god who had murdered his father? Overcome with rage, he struck Isis down, severing her head with a single, merciless blow, but death did not claim her. The wise god Thoth, master of knowledge and magic, intervened, restoring Isis by replacing her head with that of a cow. The battle was far from over, but one question remained: had Horus lost the favor of the gods with his act of violence? Or was his wrath justified? What would happen next in this war of gods? The war between Horus and Seth raged for decades, shaking the heavens and earth. Battle after battle, neither god would yield. But in one fateful clash, deep in the scorching desert, Seth gained the upper hand. With a vicious strike, he gouged out Horus's eyes, blinding him and leaving him helpless in the shifting sands, but this was not the end. The goddess Hathor, guardian of love and healing, came to Horus's aid. With her divine touch, she restored his sight, allowing him to rise again, stronger than before. The gods, weary of the endless war, called for a truce. They demanded that Horus and Seth reconcile. Seth, ever cunning, pretended to accept peace and invited Horus to a great feast in his palace. But under the cover of night, he attempted his most vile act yet. He sought to disgrace his nephew, to strip him of his honor, and make him unworthy of the throne. But Horus was no longer a defenseless child. He fought back, defending himself and preventing Seth's treachery. And now, it was his turn to strike. Together with Isis, Horus devised a final plan. Using trickery, they laced lettuce leaves with Horus's divine essence and served them to Seth. Unaware of the deception, Seth consumed them. In that moment, his strength faltered, his power weakened, and before the eyes of the gods, he began to deteriorate. Humiliated, weakened, and exposed, Seth had no choice but to accept defeat. But was this truly the end of his reign? Or did the god of chaos still have one last trick up his sleeve? What would be the final judgment of the gods? After 80 long years of conflict, the divine court finally rendered its verdict in favor of Horus, granting him the throne that destiny had long reserved for him. Isis, radiant with pride and joy, watched as her beloved son ascended to his rightful place among the gods. Meanwhile, as a final punishment for his treachery, Seth was condemned to a fate most humbling, forced to travel alongside Ra, guiding the sun god's majestic boat as it sailed across the heavens. His enraged roars echoed throughout the skies in the form of mighty thunder. Could this be the end of Seth's dark legacy, or does his punishment hold secrets that might one day stir chaos anew? What mysteries lie behind the echoes of his thunderous roars? Once hailed as the greatest of all deities, Ra, the sun god, eventually grew weary with the weight of his immortal reign. In his twilight years, he chose to relinquish his earthly rule and retreat to the heavens, his divine legacy forever enshrined in Egyptian lore. Revered as the mighty force that banished darkness, Ra embarked on his daily voyage across the sky in his radiant sun boat, scattering light over the land. Yet, as night fell, he journeyed into the underworld, where he was required to pass through 12 mystical gates, each gate symbolizing a distinct realm of the netherworld. Along his path, he always paused to pay homage to Osiris, the eternal ruler of the dead. What secrets might lie behind those 12 enigmatic gates? Could each gate reveal a hidden truth about life, death, and the eternal cycle of rebirth? Yet even as Ra continued his sacred journey, a formidable enemy lurked in the shadows, Apophis, the monstrous serpent determined to devour the sun boat and plunge the world into utter darkness. In one terrifying moment, Apophis succeeded in swallowing the sun, triggering an eclipse that left the world in momentary despair. But the serpent could not hold the radiant orb. It was eventually regurgitated back into the heavens. After Seth's brutal bid for power, he was tasked with a critical duty: to guard Ra's sacred boat from the clutches of Apophis and ensure that the journey through the underworld remained safe. Could Apophis ever be truly defeated, or will the serpent always rise again from the depths of chaos? What other hidden dangers might be waiting in the dark corners of the underworld? In the land of the living, kings ruled over men. But in the realm of the dead, one god reigned supreme, Anubis, the jackal-headed deity of the afterlife. With piercing eyes and an unwavering gaze, he stood as the guardian of tombs, the overseer of mummification, and the guide of wandering souls. Long before Osiris took his throne in the underworld, Anubis was its first ruler. It was he who presided over the sacred rituals of death, ensuring that every soul was properly prepared for their journey beyond. His presence was a constant in funeral rites, where priests, wearing masks shaped in his likeness, performed the sacred embalming process. But Anubis's greatest role was yet to come. He became the judge of the dead, standing before the grand scales of Ma'at. With his steady hands, he placed the hearts of the deceased onto one side of the scale, while on the other, he set the feather of truth. A soul's fate rested on this final test. If their heart was lighter than the feather, they were granted eternal paradise. But if it was heavy with sin, they were cast into oblivion, devoured by the monstrous Ammit. How many souls passed his test? And how many were lost to the abyss, never to be reborn? Even today, as the sands of time bury the temples of old, does Anubis still watch over the passage between life and death? Among the divine guardians of Egypt, one deity stood apart, not as a warrior, nor as a judge, but as a protector of grace, warmth, and mystery. She was Bastet, the cat goddess, revered for her watchful gaze and silent strength. To the Egyptians, cats were more than mere animals, they were sacred beings, embodiments of Bastet herself. They prowled the temples and homes, keeping them safe from vermin and, as the ancients believed, from evil spirits. To harm a cat was considered a grave sin, and to own one was a blessing, but Bastet was not always gentle. She was once a fierce lioness, feared as the warrior goddess Sekhmet. Over time, her rage softened, and she transformed into the graceful feline guardian of home and family. Yet, within her still lingered the spirit of the huntress, and those who crossed her would soon learn that even the most serene protector could become a deadly predator. What power did Bastet truly wield? Was she simply a protector, or did she hide a more fearsome nature beneath her tranquil form? Could the goddess of grace still be waiting for the world to remember her? Time has buried the temples, and the voices of the gods have faded into legend. But some say the spirits of the old gods never truly vanished. They watch, they wait, lingering in the shadows of history. Cats still walk among us, their gaze as piercing as ever. They slip between worlds, silent and mysterious. Could it be that they remember Bastet's divine embrace? Do they still hear the whispers of the goddess who once protected them? Perhaps, in the dead of night, when a cat watches you from the darkness, it is not mere curiosity. Perhaps it is waiting, watching, just as it did in the days of old. Is Bastet still with us? And if so, will she one day return? The mysteries of Egyptian mythology are just one piece of the vast puzzle of history. If you enjoyed this journey, don't stop here. Explore more lost civilizations, ancient legends, and historical enigmas by checking out our other videos. Let us know in the comments which mystery of history you'd like us to uncover next. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to MysticlibraryX to continue your adventure into the unknown.